Today is World Radio Day, and what better way than to celebrate than to take a trip down memory lane. And I am joined with two of the founding directors of Highland Radio, Billy Patterson and Packie Keeney. Good afternoon to you both.
Hi, Michaela.
It would be handy if I put up the microphones. That's a terrible way to start the celebration of World Radio Day.
Well, you can go again.
So we're going to start with where it all started. We'll start with yourself, Packie. Many years ago, how did Highland Radio start?
Well, it was an idea at the time. Myself and a business partner then, the late Kevin McIntyre from Lifford. We were another business, and we were always looking for ideas just for something for the future. And then I used to send the local papers. With nine of our family. 6 of them were abroad at a stage, so I used to send them the local newspapers. Thanks, Billy.
You're sounding perfect.
So I was having to send the Donegal People's Press and the Donegal Democrat and then the Derry Journal, the Derry People, whatever. And one day I said, I wish there was only one paper for the county.
Yeah.
So it kind of led on to, we had a radio station for the county. Now that didn't transpire fully either, because we didn't get the southern part of the county, do you remember? So then from that we took the notion, look, we'll go and look for a radio licence. And we went to Mr. Billy Patterson, was one of the people. Billy was with the Patterson's folk group a little bit before your time, Michaela, but
well before.
popular, world popular, believe me,
yeah.
You were. Terrific group. So we talked to Billy, and then we talked to
Kevin.
Kevin, that's right.
Kevin McIntyre,
that's it, the two of us. So then we talked to the late Senator Paddy McGowan, and his suggestion was that you should form a committee, county-wide committee, which was good advice at the time. So we went off to Glencolin and we talked to Father James McDyer. Jim White was a TD in Ballyshannon. He was there. Then we looked in his own. We had Brendan Keaveney down there. Then we had Dermot Walsh down in Carrigart. And then we had Donald McLaughlin, Lifford, myself and Kevin were Lifford as well. Barney Doherty and Letterkenny, the late Barney.
Dees Mackey.
And Dees Mackey became our secretary. He was in the regional development officer at the time, like cross-border. Very efficient man, who later went on to become county manager in Tipperary, so we lost him at that point.
Right.
We started out, we applied for a radio licence in 1979, and we didn't get the licence until 10 years later.
And I think a lot of people, because we're celebrating 35 years this year, don't think of all that work that went in the 10 years before that. That was a lot of work.
Years
that's
of work,
right, Michaela. So there were 10 years there, and that submission at that time was used eventually in our submission in 1989, what we did in 1979, which is 10 years previous. But in between times, we had lots of meetings, mostly in the Inter-County Hotel in Lifford.
Yeah, that's right.
And Billy was there, and
Raymond O'Neill.
Raymond O'Neill was our solicitor, and we're leaving somebody else out.
Well, I don't know.
I'm sure there's been so many voices feeding into kind of what direction you were going to take over the years, and even getting started initially.
But you see, the point was that the pirates were on the go, and when we applied first, they said not till the pirates are gone. If you go pirate, you're blowing your chance of getting the thing. So we stayed off. We didn't go down the pirate road. We waited and we waited and we waited, and then eventually the government took action, decided that these pirates really can't be tolerated much more. Now, fortunately for us, we were able to get an awful lot of people who worked on pirate radio.
That's right.
To help whenever we started.
Right.
And we went to a few different stations in this county and further south. not in this county. In Mayo and places like that, where we picked their brains.
Yeah.
And said, what have you been doing? You've got a licence a year. What have you been doing, and what shouldn't you do, and what should you do? So we took up all that information.
Yeah.
So we started with some experience broadcasting and some experience from managing and running stations. But we were all new boys. It was just a dream from Packie here and Kevin. They started the ball rolling. So
Yeah. And that was kind of one of my other questions was, you mentioned there the pirate radios. How did you decide how you were going to staff the station? What shows you were going to do throughout, say, the first year? How were we going to get off the ground?
We had a fair idea from listening. There was Northwest Community Radio in Buncrana, and we had Donegal Community Radio in Letterkenny, and out of that we got the most of our staff out of that. And they had been doing a lot of music, but there were also discussions. And we always wanted this prime programme in the morning, like that's Your Match and Gay Byrne and these guys, you know, and that proved to be a great success.
But we put ads in the papers as well for anybody who was interested
Right.
in broadcasting in whatever capacity.
Yeah.
Yes.
To apply. Excuse me, I shouldn't have that cup of tea. And we interviewed them. Michael O'Donnell and myself interviewed a lot of people around the county. We went to their location and people came in and we talked to them. And we ended up hiring a good number of people who, and we're very proud of the fact that they lasted for years.
Yes.
They just weren't, they didn't come and go.
And still now, people are here from day one.
We still have people here from day one, which is a great tribute to them.
That's it. And it's lovely. I think I'm here now nearly 9 years, but it's nice that there's such a family feel here, and that's obviously been the way from the start.
That's what
people
we
here.
wanted. That's what we wanted. That was the family. The family feeling was the one that where we cared about one another. We cared about broadcasting. Now, I think some of the people that we were initially worked with in the early stages of planning were interested in radio as an investment. We were interested in radio as a service and you know, talk to the people, hear the people, and let's make this work and give it a family sort of feeling, which we always talked about, and it worked.
Yeah,
it worked.
And you were both on air as well, Packie. I've heard you started the Monday night sessions.
Yeah, well, that was started by the late Brendan Maxwell, who was a great hit here, and it was through initiative right enough myself and Brendan, because a lot of the local artists weren't getting looked about, and we were trying to decide how we could make it popular for them, or they could use the station. So the Monday nights programme was developed from that. But then, unfortunately, in 2000, Brendan died suddenly. And at that stage, then we needed somebody to take it over. So it ended up that I ended up taking it.
Yes.
And so it was the programme was already set up by Brendan Maxwell, really, the popularity of it. And so I did 15 years on it after that.
Yeah, and it's amazing how, you know, you talked about the, you know, mid-morning show, that's still going, the Monday night session. So the basis of what you both started along with the others is still there as well.
Well, mine wasn't, because I did the wee classical bit, you see, a fairly light classical on Sunday nights. And I had a lovely little audience who, some of them told me, they were driving home and they were listening to a piece of music, or I was talking about something or other, about the composer or the performer or whatever it was. And they got home before I'd finished, and they sat in the car. George Bowles, one of them. George and the wife, Betty. And they drove home just over here.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get out of the car till I'd finished the bloody thing, you know. They didn't want to miss it. But that sort of little thing then, when I was banned from the station because of the COVID thing, which is a blessing in disguise, because I haven't a clue about these modern things they're all working with. You know. That was the end of that particular era.
Yes.
But anyway, it was nice to try and give everybody a little bit of what they liked, and that was...
Yeah, because even now there's so many different mix of music shows. There is really something for everybody. And you mentioned there, obviously that is one of the changes, the classical music show that you did yourself, Billy. Is there any significant change you've seen throughout the years? I know we're so into digital and social media now. Would that be the main thing that you've seen change?
Well, you see, when Packie and I started, we edited our own tapes, and that meant literally a tape and put it down and get the other piece of tape and cut them.
I've heard it was very dangerous.
and test them that there was no big in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And then with with LPs, we had full-sized LPs, and you had to find the track while the previous one was playing, and you had to get that ready and keyed up. So, and then CDs came, and we thought they were fantastic. And now they don't even do CDs, I think, anymore. So we're out of business, Packie.
We're out of the technical word has moved.
Yeah, massively.
It's gone mad.
It's brilliant, actually. I think it's terrific. But we were very fortunate. We got very enthusiastic people in here because the people who were in Pirate Radio were there for enthusiasm.
The love of radio.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
Because there were no money in it. So we got all those people in here and we paid them then. But we had a very enthusiastic bunch who didn't go home at 5:30 in the evening if there was something to be done at
Yes.
6:30, And we got great commitment, and the staff in here and the clerical staff and all that, they were the same. They were all committed to it. So we were very fortunate. Then we had another good break then too when, remember, Don O'Doherty joined us, Billy, who was a great broadcaster from Derry City. He had spent several years with the BBC and he was well known in the whole northwest here and in Derry City. So we did 2 great programmes here on a Saturday and on a Sunday with 2 different varieties of music, and so he was a great stable.
Yeah.
He worked in Radio Foyle.
He did.
And then the brains, whoever it was at the time, the young, let's move forward, stuff. And I think they decided Don was getting a bit long in the tooth.
Right.
So he was given the gentle push.
Oh.
Yeah.
And he was very big in running a concert for charity every year, and it just happened to be at that time that he left Radio Foyle. And I went to the concert and I had a chat with him. I knew him for years. I said, Don, would you like to do a wee bit of broadcasting? Actually, I would. I said, you're hired.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that. And he had all these followers and all these people who loved Don's show.
Over.
The whole lot followed him over to Highland. So I'm afraid the people who decided that he was past the sell-by date made a mistake.
It was a great break for us. But then initially, after the first year, we went to the number 1 position, and the person who took us to the first number 1 position was the late Packie Bradley from Buncrana. And that was the most popular show in Ireland at that particular time. It was even featured in the Irish Times.
Amazing. And
they talked about him. So then after that, Packie show was very popular, but then we started the Sean Doherty show, as it was known, and that became more popular again. So we were at number 1 for I don't know how many years.
Still are.
And by the way, congratulations, you're back at number 1.
Yes, I know. It's great. It's great achievement for everybody.
Yeah, it is.
And I think it's great for, the station. It's your voice, your community.
Yeah.
It's great that people have that local resource, which was started, Packie, you mentioned there about sending the newspapers, that one Donegal voice for people right across the world and locally.
Right. That's right. And
the audience, you see, we're in Donegal, we talk about being neglected all the time, and they show their what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't matter. I'm getting old. They show their enthusiasm, I suppose, for Highland, because we are there for them and we are their voice, and we're up here in the northwest and we're with them and they're with us. Thank God.
Yeah.
So we're kind of more than a radio station.
Yeah.
It's more than
definitely.
Community. We had a great community ethos, and we went abroad then too. We did a lot of programs back from Glasgow, London, Manchester, New York. We went to Chicago and Philadelphia and all that.
And how difficult would that have been back then, broadcasting? Because now, we use the tie line, it's all through the Wi-Fi. Like, how difficult would that have been trying to set up that?
Just the ordinary telephone line, but we managed to get a mixer then in those days, which was a big deal, that give you more broadband than there was available before that.
Right.
So I remember the very first one we did was from the Irish Centre in Philadelphia with an extended broadcast and better quality. And one thing sticks in my mind from that night. We were there, John Kerr was over with us, and it was Pio McCann, Charlie and myself. And the we interviewed everybody. Charlie and Pio did all the interviewing. I was doing the technical side, and this man was interviewed, and he was from Derry, the Limavady direction down there, and he couldn't believe it. You see that he was sending messages home, but he didn't realise that this might work the other way. And so during the break, I would leave the station feed on. Right, the Irish Centre in Philadelphia is massive, you know. And so next thing, this return of his request or his good wishes came back down over the radio.
While you were still on
Lovely.
air.
While we were still on air, and he nearly fell coming up to get near the speaker. You know,
And that's a perfect example of how radio connects everybody right across the world.
That was it. And Vincent Kelly, the hell of a guy, was at the other end.
Vincent,
And he would
we better not start going through all the great people we had here, because we're going to leave somebody out. But there are so many good.
This is a team here, I must show it to you anyhow. We're opening with Don Kavanagh there.
Yes.
One of the first years. This program was going, some people might recognise that as that camera there.
Yes.
And six of the best. It was after 6 years, we had six very successful years. But we had a football team here as well at the time. And all these guys here were playing, and I'll read you just some of the names. Back row was Sean O'Donnell, and Ricky Bowl, Donald Kavanagh. Don says the only match he ever played with the Highland radio team. John Breslin, the next person. Sean Doherty.
Father Sean.
Father Sean now. Tommy Rosney. Gary Quigley. Ewan McBride, who was on sales here. Front row then was John Keenan with a few imports. Canis Wilson. Damien McFadden. Andy Nutt, who was on sales here too. Keith Fletcher, the hell of a guy. And Ivan Borden. That was the team there.
Lovely. You can see it in the camera there.
Yeah.
And Billy, starting off, did you have a plan how many years it would go for, or see how we go after the first year?
Well, we knew it was going to work almost immediately, and there were, like every business, it took a lot of time to get all the customers to become viable. It took 2-3 years at least before we became viable. We knew it was going to be a success, but it was just going to take time, and we had to stay afloat in that time, because it would, as I kept telling everybody, and you kept telling them, stay with us. I'm sorry, the money is not great, but when the ship floats, we all float with it.
We'll get there.
That sort of stuff. But we knew it was going to work because of the reaction we were getting. I mean, early days, in the first couple of weeks, some woman phoned in from the West Donegal and said, "I can't. This broken down. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Oh.
What am I going to do? I can't get you."
So we do very instant audience. Because I remember O'Neill's from Glenamary, who were installed the original studio here. They had also installed the one in Galway Bay.
Right.
FM. Now, I wasn't listening upstairs, but they were telling me they were here for the opening. Now, Billy was down for the opening of the station at the Mount Ergel. We had a live opening down there. But here, the phones were hopping. We were opening at, I think it was 5:30 on the 15th of March in the evening time. And the phones were hopping here for people wanting to place requests. And one of the workers from Limavady, or from Michael, I think it was Michael O'Hara, says they were in Galway Bay for 2 weeks and the phone rang twice.
Oh, so you knew it was off to a good start.
So basically we were having more phone calls before we got on air than they had for the previous 2 weeks.
Brilliant.
So, and it never stopped.
It was a great
Hasn't
day
stopped
that we got
since.
the license. What was the first song that was ever played in Highland?
Turn your radio on.
Turn your radio on.
Danny Kelly played Turn Your Radio On.
Yeah. So we'll finish with Packie. What was your number one highlight?
Oh, for me, it would always have to be the 1992 All-Ireland homecoming. Billy would know that. That was...
a drunken orgy.
Well, we were, I had played Gaelic football all my life, and the big thing was one day to win the All-Ireland for Donegal.
Yeah, fantastic.
I was very fortunate to be in Croke Park that day engineering for Highland Radio. And better still, we broadcast on the bus, a homecoming bus from Sligo Station, which had started at 7:15 on a Monday evening, and it finished at 3:30 in the morning.
Right.
And the Diamond
I'd say there was a great atmosphere.
And by the way, the audio of that's all up on YouTube. Anybody
very
ever wants
good.
to listen back to it, it's 3.5 hours of broadcasting.
So you're 3.5
That's for the
hours
real
is weird.
enthusiasts now. But it's there just for the record.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
You know, but that was
Brilliant.
most outstanding. And we were only 2 years on air at the time, which was amazing.
Yeah.
We were fortunate we had the World Cup in 1990. Remember Packie and the goals in Italia 90. And then we had followed up then was the All Ireland final win. And that was very special.
Yeah.
Billy, what about yourself?
Well, instead of just, I couldn't pick out a highlight. I mean,
So much.
every week was an adventure, and there was a highlight every week. But as this is World Radio Day, if I could just give you one or two little World Radio facts here that
Yes.
I took the trouble to look up, so I'm going to get them in. Okay. In 1895, a young Italian called Guglielmo Marconi invented a way of transmitting what we know as Morse code, dots and dashes, and that changed travel the world over. Ships and no, there weren't any airplanes at that time, so they got voices instead of just dots and dashes. And he was from an Italian noble family, and his mother was called Anne Jameson, the whiskey people.
Oh, same people.
Yeah, his mother married into these Italians, and this is Marconi. But anyway, they had a house in Ballycastle just opposite Rathlin, and he did some broadcasting from there, sending signals out from there out to Rathlin and I think some other places. But anyway, he was the first man. But the first man to ever speak on the radio. Are we keeping you too late?
No, you're grand. I'm sure David won't mind. It's
Oh,
World Radio Day.
Okay, it's World Radio Day, right. On Christmas Eve in 1906, the very first words spoken on radio were from a Canadian called Reginald Fessenden. He was the very first voice ever to broadcast, and his historic first message could hardly have been more Canadian. And the voice said, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it snowing where you are, Mr. Thiessen? That were the first words ever spoken on radio. And the first music ever played on radio was the same man in the same broadcast who broadcast a violent section of O Holy Night, because it was Christmas. And that was the first piece of music ever broadcast.
Mad.
And there's a Donegal connection I'll just finish briefly with. Radio used from a ship to shore to arrest a criminal, a murderer, was from a ship called the Laurentic,
Oh, yes.
where the murderer was on board with his girlfriend, and the captain of the ship, the Montrose, thought that he recognised him from photographs that appeared in the papers, and he called Scotland Yard, and he said, I think the man you're looking for, Dr. Crippen, is here on my ship. So guy from Scotland Yard got on another ship and got to Canada, faster ship, before the one that Crippen was on, and arrested him as he walked down the thing. So that was the very first arrest made from ship to shore. And that ship eventually, the Laurentic, sank off about a couple of miles out on Lochs Willie.
Yeah.
And she had something like 43 tons of gold on board.
Still
But
there.
anyway, that was just a little Donegal connection. There was another first for radio.
Yeah, the power of radio.
We're very happy with the people who have owned Highland ourselves, first of all, and then another group. And then with the Rabbit family, which we're very pleased about. They're very good for the station. Their hearts are in this station, I'm glad to say, and I hope it continues for many, many more years. So the best to you. You're the torchbearers now, Michaela. Okay?
Yeah. We'll try anyway. I don't know if we could be as influential as yourselves getting anything like this off the ground, but we'll try.
Do that. Nice to talk.
Well, thank you both for joining me to celebrate